ask you how to introduce you because I'm not quite sure where you are. I know you're at Israel 365. I don't know if you're at the news part of it or if you're in the action part of it.
So I'm the executive director of Israel 365 Action.
Okay.
That's the position I hold there, which basically means that I kind of direct, like the orchestra director, I kind of direct all of the advocacy and choosing positions on issues, working with Christian leaders on their positions on Israel. Like right before getting on this call, I was having a conversation with Pastor Mario Bramnick, who is one of the faith leaders very close to Trump, and he works very closely with Michelle Bachmann and Tony Perkins and a lot of the Christian leadership that's involved in politics and knows Huckabee very well, and he's assembled this kind of ad hoc organization that's trying to sort of put forward the policy positions of the evangelical pro-Israel community to get in front of Trump, because and I was just strategizing with him how to handle the fact that the way these Iran negotiations are going is really not in Israel's best interest, and this whole Steve Witkoff situation is getting it's looking like Trump is being drawn into a deal that could end up saving the Iranian regime rather than bringing it down. And we were just strategizing about what the talking points should be for a letter that they're putting together for all these Christian leaders that will then be put in front of President Trump, putting forward their position. So I'm working with him. So he called me to talk through what should the position be, and I'm going to help him put it together. That's the kind of work I do behind the scenes. So like when we say Israel 365 Action, it's really, we're the hub of a lot of interaction between MAGA people like that I'm close to, like Steve Bannon, who I literally text back and forth with on a daily basis about Israel. Like he has people on every issue who kind of feed him headlines and he discusses issues with and discusses messaging and so I talk to Bannon on a regular basis and that whole part of the MAGA world, but I'm also in touch with Christian leadership. I'm also in touch with members of Knesset and ministers in the Israeli government who I know very well. I also am a columnist for the Jerusalem Post. So I kind of operate in this like messaging and
you're coordinating it across the board with all the stakeholders, all the interested parties.
I'm like a political strategist but not working as a consultant, as a political strategist, but pushing forward an agenda and defending Israel and, doing that kind of work.
Well, I can tell you there's, I have a few top issues and Israel is right there. So I'm very pleased to talk to you because there are forces moving in the United States of America that have been ongoing for some time. But after October 7th, obviously that flared. I've said, actually, there was a blessing. There always is a blessing that comes out of evil. And that is they stuck their head up out of the sand or, from behind the rocks or wherever they were. They came out of their caves and they let us know how vocal and how committed they were. And I think it was a really good thing for the American people. I knew that. You knew that. But what we needed to do is have all of America see it. So it's really, really ugly. But yet, at the same time, it is a shot across the bow, and we understand how bad it is. And I do worry about our beloved President Trump getting dragged into things by parties that are certainly offside when it comes to myself. Because, to be honest with you, my two top issues are Israel and immigration. And what I would say is legalized immigration is a tremendous issue for my viewers, and I think for MAGA. And there are people on both those issues that are trying to drag President Trump, away from what would be core MAGA thinking.
Exactly. So this is, I don't know if you saw back in was it January or February? Back when, I think it was January, back when when was it that Netanyahu first visited Trump in the White House? A couple months ago.
He was the first. Yeah, it was, January,
that big
early February at the latest. Yeah.
That big visit. So I did that immediately before the press conference of BB, the historic press conference with where Trump unveiled his Gaza plan, and that big press conference that we were all sitting around.
That was historic.
And remember, he came on like half an hour, 40 minutes late.
Yeah.
So for the full hour before the Trump BB press conference comes on, Bannon's War Room live was me and Steve and Frank Gaffney. I don't know if you saw that episode.
I actually only got to see part of that, but that was a very important...
Because on that episode, the reason I bring it up is that this whole topic you're raising about putting forward an America First MAGA Middle East policy that really, at its core, really is pro-Israel. And what's happened, there's a big concern right now that I have, that Bannon has. This is what we talk about all the time. Is that the younger MAGA movement has become hostile to Israel, and in great number, and they're misreading it. They're misunderstanding the situation. They're missing the larger plot of what's of the attack on Western civilization. Here's something interesting to think about. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm having a blast already talking to you. Do you want to?
Yeah, you know what?
Here?
Absolutely. And I'm going to have you on probably more than once, because what my plan was something I've wanted to talk about for so long. I was going to talk about the deep state lawfare in Israel, Aaron Barak. I wanted to find out, is the lawfare a natural outcome of the revolution of the Supreme Court in the 70s, 90s, probably more so? And
have you seen my video on this?
No. Oh, I didn't know you did a video on this.
No, on my YouTube channel, on Israel 365's YouTube channel. So we put out about 3 videos a week. And I've been covering this crisis pretty in depth. And I put out, I think, a 12-minute video, an explainer video, when the whole story broke, like about a week and a half ago, about this whole Qatar thing and that firing of the Shin Bet chief and how it ties in with the judicial issues.
So this is very important to me, because I believe that that America and Israel obviously share much in our way of life, our thinking, our worldview, our biblical basis, and all of that. And the idea that this lawfare and deep state is entrenched in Israel and it's working itself out the same way. Like, there's a deep state in the UK, totally different thing. The deep state in Israel is go after the strong leader, because the deep state is utterly leftist and wants him gone. And so I do want to talk about that, because I believe that American people are being greatly deceived by many commentators who are obviously anti-Israel, and then they just throw out, and they just indicted Prime Minister Netanyahu. And Netanyahu is such a monster. He's been indicted, corruption, blah, blah, blah. So I think that's an important topic. But let's go back to what you were talking about before. President Trump getting led astray by 2 different forces. One is anti-Israel, and one is pro-mass immigration into the United States under the guise of legality. But we've got a massive investigation that we're rolling out that shows that there's collusion between... I won't even go into that. My point is, those are 2 issues that there are really strong forces trying to pull President Trump away from what would, in a clear thinking mode, would be a MAGA stance, pro-Israel, all the way, standing with Israel, and also dealing with this immigration issue, which is none of, you don't care about.
Yeah, well, listen, think about what America First means. Right? America First foreign policy, first and foremost, means that America is not embedded in every corner of the world and meddling in everyone's affairs and micromanaging the world, right? Because it's America First foreign policy. But America First foreign policy also doesn't mean retreating and allowing Africa and all the resources and all of the shipping lanes. Of course not. So it's not isolationist, but it believes that countries should be, America in the same way that let me reframe. The America First foreign policy camp maintains adamantly that Europe has to start, let's say in the more moderate part of it, that Europe has to start paying its fair share. And the United States cannot be underwriting the defense of all these European nations forever and ever. And America shouldn't be. That's at the moderate end. On the more extreme end in the America First movement, people say, let's dismantle NATO, let Europe fend for themselves. It's not our problem, right? So that's like the America First foreign policy approach. But what does that really mean? But what it really boils down to, what everyone in that whole scope agrees with, is that countries should be responsible for their own defense. America, of course, has interests, but America's investment should only go as far as its interests. But you want strong allies and partners regionally who will step up to the plate and take care of the defense interests so that you don't have to. We don't want American troops on the ground doing things in the Middle East. So what do we want? We want good partners in the Middle East who are empowered to take care of business on their own. So here's an interesting experiment you can do. You can go online and search for a map of where there are U.S. bases, military bases, everywhere in the world. And you can see a map. Go over to the Middle East. You'll notice that there's U.S. bases in Egypt. There's U.S. bases in Saudi Arabia. There's U.S. bases in Jordan. You know where there aren't U.S. bases? Israel. There aren't U.S. bases in Israel. Why? Because Israel can take care of its own business. So yeah, Israel gets military aid from the United States. It's true, but we don't say that Jordan is getting military aid the way Israel is. But what does it cost to run those bases in Jordan every year? I bet it's more than the aid that Israel gets. In other words, the United States is best. America First foreign affairs should mean that you have partners like Israel who take care of their own business so that you don't have to be involved, and that they're strong partners so that you can do things like the Abraham Accords and bring peace to an entire region because you have a strong partner that you can rely on. That's America First foreign policy. That you don't have to be involved. You don't have to be fighting Iraq, Afghanistan type wars or shoveling money at a Ukraine type situation, because for a minimal investment, you can have a region policed by your ally who has direct interests in the region. And that's the ideal America First foreign policy. And the best application of that is Israel.
I agree with you. And I think that that one of the characteristics of that policy, America First foreign policy, is that Americans shed blood for their homeland, and in extreme circumstances, they put their blood on the line. World War II, right? I'm for World War II, America having entered into it. But we don't put Americans on the ground, boots on the ground, which means their lives are on the line, just across the world, jeopardizing American lives. I don't mind necessarily helping financially in a military aid context and doing partnerships and coordinating efforts, military exercises, and building, say, the Iron Dome together using technology and the production of it and sharing that kind of weaponry. But to have your troops on the ground everywhere, that is a very expensive thing. It takes men and women away from their families. It's huge upkeep or overhead, but it also jeopardizes American lives, the blood.
Also takes America's eye off the ball and directs resources on things that are not the primary objective. And America's defense and foreign policy resources should be directed at the primary existential threat, which is the Chinese Communist Party. And if the United States could be less engaged in the Middle East because Israel's empowered, take care of business there. You've empowered a local ally, and you don't have to get in. That's real America First foreign policy. And then now you can focus on the Chinese Communist Party, which is where you should be focused. Israel doesn't want the U.S. meddling in our business. Now, occasionally we do need help, but it's sort of surgical here and there. Yes, there's a war going on, and we need this, or we need help with strikes on Iran. Fine, you need some help, but for the most part, Israel takes care of its own business. And you brought up the issue of cooperating on things like the Iron Dome. Do you know what the research and development value of what Israel does with the weapons that it purchases from the United States are? They don't need to think of all within research and development, doing trial runs and doing all kinds of tests for all the armaments, all the munitions, everything that you're doing, everything that you're creating. Because Israel is an active military theater, Israel is using all this equipment, and the research and development value to these military companies is in the billions of dollars.
And they've acknowledged that. And they've
acknowledged that. So now, listen. Frankly, I'm in the camp in Israel, and so are some other people that you have great respect for. People like Caroline Glick, who you mentioned earlier. There are a lot of people in the camp that I'm in that we would like to draw down the aid from the United States and actually bring it down to zero. It's less and less of our defense budget, and the damage that's caused politically to Israel by the fact that we continue to receive this aid is not worth it. And also, Donald Trump's not always going to be in office, and we saw what happened when Joe Biden was in office. Israel's hands were tied. And it was directly due to the fact that the 10-year memorandum that's coming to an end soon, that was signed at the end of the Obama years, that Israel's still bound by, caused Israel to have to shut down parts of our own military industry, and we ended up having our hands tied by the Blinken-Biden gang because we were dependent on the United States for certain pieces of aid. It became a drug that Israel was addicted to, and with a few small adjustments in the national budget, we can do without it. It's a tiny percentage of Israel's GDP.
It brings you Israel into great scorn. It's just giving a weapon.
Not worth it.
It's not worth it. But also, I want to focus for just a moment on the fact that Israel had shut down so many of its defense industry or manufacturing, and I'm not sure about design and innovation, R&D. But I know that manufacture was essentially just shut down. And that is nuts. That it's sort of like the idea that our supply chain requires during COVID, our going to China to get antibiotics or whatever else that we needed. That's crazy. You've got to be able to produce enough of your military hardware needs and ammunition needs in your own nation and not be offshoring that to another country, even though the majority of Americans love and support Israel because we're clear thinking and we understand that that is America first. And but you never know what's around the bend, and you get a Biden and he withholds those necessary bombs and missiles because he wants to punish you and tweak Israel.
But it goes beyond that. Mm-hmm. The whole reason that Hamas is still standing is due to the Biden administration forcing Israel's hand on the humanitarian aid. All these people screaming humanitarian aid. At the beginning of the war, Israel was not allowing in humanitarian aid, and Yoav Gallant said quite openly, the defense minister at the time, he said quite openly after that first. After that visit by Blinken, I think it was in November, where he said the only reason we're allowing in the humanitarian aid is we depend on the United States for weapons, and they're forcing us to. Now, had Israel not allowed in humanitarian aid, remember at the very beginning, Israel shut off all the electricity and the water, and everyone in the whole world, screamed and cried, and the Biden administration forced Israel to turn it all back on. In an alternate reality, where Israel is not forced to turn on the water and electricity and does not allow in humanitarian aid, this war is over in a flash, because the 40,000 Hamas troops were all deep down in the tunnels. The tunnels are so far underground, you've seen enough on them that these are not tunnels that are just under your floor. These are
they're like multi-story buildings that you see in a movie. If you go watch a movie, go ahead.
But hear the point. They rely on ongoing electricity constantly for ventilation, for their computer systems that are down there, for everything. They can't even breathe without. When you're that far underground, there's no natural air. So, if the electricity had been shut off and the water had been shut off, it would have smoked them out and brought them above ground. It would have forced all the terrorists above ground. There'd be no humanitarian aid coming in, so they have no leverage over the population. The population would be evacuated, and Hamas would have been destroyed in a flat. The only reason this war lasted as long as it has, and the only reason that Hamas has not been destroyed, is because the Biden administration twisted Israel's arm, forcing them to turn the lights on, to bring in all those massive amounts of humanitarian aid. And people think humanitarian aid is like sandwiches and medicine. Humanitarian aid, a huge percentage of it is fuel, which went directly into the Hamas war machine. The Biden administration was forcing Israel to keep Hamas alive. And that's why we're here.
And that's why we're here. But also, in addition to that, whenever they pulled Israel back from moving into, say, Rafah, which was toward the end of that first stage of the war, I suppose you would call it, each one of those sort of slowdowns or shutdowns or pullbacks caused lives and extended the war. And it increased the power and the durability, the duration of Hamas and their ability to continue. I think the point that you're making about the fact that had it been shut down, they would have had to come up like rats out of the sewer and for a breath of fresh air and to be able to, because without, like you said, without ventilation, they would be dead. And so they would have had to come up. That's a very well-made point. And I would also say, too, that we now know, and we have known for some time, that there was no looming starvation, as I like to call it, in Gaza ever, not one day. And they had somewhere around 3,000 calories per person per day, which if a normal woman eats 3,000 calories a day, that's including babies and children, she would be so fat in no time at all. I mean, you would be absolutely obese. And so whenever, there was never starvation. Well, let's talk, let's continue along the line of drawing down on Israel's need for the United States and cooperation between, our militaries. And I would like to move to a question that I've had for some time. When I see India trying to drag America into doing, tech and AI, data centers and all this stuff in India, which I'm against for various reasons. And I'm always asking myself this: where is Israel in working with President Trump and building up? Why wouldn't we be producing some military weaponry and equipment in Israel so that we have it in that region of the world? Why wouldn't we do partnerships on AI and data centers in Israel?
So there's like I said to you, that I'm a voice, a small one. I mean, through my column and through my columns in the Jerusalem Post, through my advocacy work, I am one who's in the camp, like I said, who says that we should do away with this aid and let's move more to a partnership rather than a patronage. It's not healthy the way it is for the relationship, for all the reasons that we've stated. But in terms of manufacturing things here, or what that partnership looks like, it's the key is to have a broad view and understand that we can't politically. This is a damaging situation the way it is now. So how we end up, there's a lot of different ways to skin the cat, but we have to draw it down and get to a place where there will be peace in the region if Israel and the United States increase their cooperation, because everyone sees that. It's only when the U.S. starts cozying up to Iran, like you saw with Obama and Biden, or cozying up to other bad actors in the region, that everything becomes unstable. The greatest example.
Oh, go ahead. I was going to say, let's talk about some examples.
Greatest example. Look, this is what peace through strength is. Peace through strength isn't just throwing your weight around by shooting at people. Peace through strength is empowering, is rewarding good behavior and empowering your friends, so more people want to be your friends rather than trying to appease your enemies into a peace deal. And the best example is the move of the U.S. embassy to Jerusalem, which a lot of people, we were all very happy about it, and people tend to think of it as a kind of symbolic act. Oh, you moved an embassy. But it was actually a geopolitical earthquake. To me, it was the most significant. It was the most significant piece of the puzzle, because what Trump did by moving it was he showed that the king has no clothes. For decades, we were told that if the embassy was moved, there would be riots throughout the Middle East. There would be a geopolitical crisis. The diplomatic relations with Arab countries would be in crisis. There would be wars. The biggest dog that didn't bark story in geopolitical history is that nothing happened. Not only that, imagine if you had told someone before the embassy, someone said to you, if you move it, because we were told this, you remember, for decades, moving the embassy is, it's very dangerous. It could inflame the region, right? Imagine if you had said to someone who made that argument before Trump, you had made the argument, you'd said, not only will it not inflame the region, but unprecedented peace deals between Israel and Arab countries will happen after the embassy. As a result of it, they'd look at you like you were out of your mind. And that's precisely what happened. Because, one of the greatest ironies of Donald Trump is that it took a businessman from New York to step onto the world stage and show that he understands the Arab world better than all the Mideast experts. There's an expression in Israel making the rounds now in political discourse where people say Trump speaks Arabic, meaning he gets it. It's a line. Umedaber Aravit. Yeah, that's in Hebrew. Trump speaks Arabic.
That is very apropos. I like that. He does speak Arabic. I was just thinking about how I think the Arabs, they get him. They respect him. Some of them and many of them could hate him, but and others love him, but they get him and they know that he gets up. There is no way to be weak in the Middle East and survive. Weakness is, it's like giving off of a scent to a rabbit or a wild animal.
Not just your own survival. Peace for everyone. The Middle East was never more peaceful than during the 4 years of Trump's presidency. Peace deals were breaking out. Economic deals were breaking out. The bad actors were going broke. The Iranian regime was on the verge of collapse. Hamas and Hezbollah were underfunded. And we knew that if Trump had if the election hadn't been stolen and Trump had taken office in 2021, so the Abraham Accords would have expanded even further. Imagine where we'd be today.
Yeah, I agreed. And though I think that it was God's doing that it worked the way it did, because I think.
Well, agreed.
Yeah.
Providential.
When he lost, I was distraught because of what it said about my country.
Steve Bannon says all the time, it was providential.
Yeah, it was the Lord God Almighty just raining blessings. He was giving us a warning, and he was giving us time and many other things.
Agreed.
Now, we have Trump now, and we don't have the same kind of administration we had under Trump 1.0, because he learned a great deal, some hard lessons in that first go-round and in the attempt in 2020. Now, much smarter, and the people he's appointed are really MAGA people, all of them. I know that there's one or two that I would disagree with, but generally speaking, and when you've got Pete Hegseth and Mike Huckabee, and Elise Stefanik, who's now out temporarily at least, these are voices that are very, very strong, and they have conviction and courage, and they're willing to speak clearly And that is what is necessary, because this mealy mouth, sort of halfway support of Israel and trying to cover your bases and being half MAGA, you can't do that. You're either all in or you're not. So I'm feeling really, really good about where we're going with Trump, as most MAGA people are. But where are we in danger? With Witkoff, I was at first horrified when that initial ceasefire deal went on, was laid out before the inauguration. I was horrified. Then I thought, no, there's stuff going on behind the scenes. And I know you know what they would be. And so I was now hoping that step by step, this Qatar issue, that's a big problem. Iran, where do you think we're going with the Trump administration? And how can we make sure we remain or move back in the right direction, on the right path?
Well, I'm concerned. I'm concerned right now. And this is what I've been talking to Christian leaders in America about, and trying to, kind of calibrate our positions here and see if we can make our voice heard in Trump's inner circle, because we're concerned. We're concerned. The Iranian regime needs to be removed. It needs to be taken down. Now, does that mean we're advocating for airstrikes on the nuclear program? Because look, people don't understand what a nuclear Iran really means. Nuclear weapons, get out of the 1950s. Having nuclear weaponry doesn't just mean that you have missiles with a warhead. It could also mean that you have smaller tactical nuclear weapons. It could mean that you have terrorists who are funded, because think of all of Iran's proxies around the world. There's Hezbollah in Venezuela and Paraguay based there, working with the Mexican cartels. They've been there for more than a decade. They have cells in the United States. If you're going to have Iranian proxies around the world that now have access to nuclear weapons, they could have tactical nuclear weapons. Talk about nuclear terrorism. I mean, it's besides the fact that they oppress the people of Iran. Iran has the lowest rate of mosque attendance any Muslim nation. Okay, we think of it as a very religious Muslim country, but it's not. It's a pretty cosmopolitan country. Think of Iran under the Shah. This was a fairly cosmopolitan. It was the most Western. These are not Arabs; they're Persians. It's different, and they're very Western.
Very different.
They were the most Western of the nations. And if you look at a map, most people don't even look at maps of the Middle East. They just hear all the names. Look at a map of the Middle East and look at the landmass of Iran and where it's located and how big it is in comparison to the other Middle Eastern countries. And you will understand that if this Iranian regime is removed, this isn't going to be another Syria where it falls into, or Afghanistan where it's chaos and it falls into the hands of a terrorist. This is a highly educated population. It's a very Western population. It's a population that wants to give this is a population that will become, this is a country, a massive a regional superpower that will become a pro-Western nation and a bulwark and a buffer separating China from the bad actors in the Middle East rather than being the main bad actor. And suddenly you have this, the geopolitical windfall, and all the Iranian oil now falls into the hands of a pro-Western nation. Think about this. It changes everything geopolitically. And anything that leaves them in power, they're very patient. They know American presidents come and go. So if they have to hunker down and starve their people and treat them, and have less money to fund Hamas and Hezbollah for the next 4 years, fine, so be it. They'll wait it out. Or they'll work out some sort of deal where they can get the sanctions lifted in exchange for some sort of American oversight of their nuclear program for the time being. A deal that keeps them in power continues to oppress the Iranian people. It continues to perpetuate the mullah's regime. And they're patient. They play the long game. And it means that our children will still be dealing with the Iranian threat. It means that the Western world has not stood up and said, we are going to defend our civilization. Look, They talk about taking down Western civilization. Look what's happening to Europe. England's gone. It's going to be a Muslim country soon. France is gone. Germany's gone. They're gone. They've committed suicide. And the jihadists are dead serious about taking down Western civilization. And if Western civilization thinks that they can play patty cake and that they can live and let live with these people who want to take them down, when is Western civilization going to stand up and say, we will defeat the enemy who is threatening us? Why is that such a radical thing to say? When Israel talks about standing up and saying, no, your Palestinian narrative is false. This is truth. And this is and let Judeo-Christian Western civilization just stand up to this enemy who is trying to take it down. What is so wrong with it?
I have been talking virtually to everybody that I have a conversation with about the need. One of my goals is to talk so openly about these topics, about difficult topics, right? About sensitive topics, about religion, Islam. I don't want to just look at the fact that this has relevance here. Bear with me. I don't want to just look at the fact that Islamism and we want to soften it because we never want to say anything about Islam. And it's different in Israel, by the way. I know that because you have a 20% population of Muslim Arabs or Muslim and Christian Arabs, that you're in that region of Islam surrounding you. We're not. And the idea of not speaking out about your identity and your culture, and by identity, I mean as American, black, white, doesn't matter the color, you're an American. And America was founded on biblical principles, done and done. And if we are going to maintain America as America, we need to maintain the biblical principles upon which we are found. If we had, and this is kind of hyperbole, all like 1/3 Islam, 1/3 Hinduism, 1/3 Christianity, Judaism, America's gone. So talking about these things, about Iran, about protecting the West, about Islam taking over Europe and destroying it, it is, they opened the door. Of course, Europe opened the door to being destroyed. All of these things, we have to be vocal about it. What is wrong, you said? What is wrong with talking about, if you went to any Arab country, any Muslim country, any Hindu country, if you went to any of these countries, they would stand firm on wanting to protect their culture, their identity, their religion, all of it.
And in the case of Islam, of wanting to conquer the world, right, with their culture. They want to take over. Look, I want, if you're a sports fan, you want your team to win. I mean, like they think in very simple terms. They want to take over. They believe, and Westerners seem to have no conviction about defending their own culture and their own civilization. That's what's going on. But here's an interesting thought experiment for you. And I'd love to hear what you say, because I'm struggling with this question. So I have a question for you. I'm turning the tables on.
Great.
If I look around the world, I see that the supporters of Viktor Orban, who is willing to talk about these things, are overwhelmingly pro-Israel. And the supporters of Geert Wilders in the Netherlands are overwhelmingly pro-Israel. The Vox supporters in Spain, the populist nationalists there, and in France, Pen supporters are all overwhelmingly pro-Israel these days. The Bolsonaro supporters in Brazil, the Milei supporters in Argentina, overwhelmingly pro-Israel. At Bolsonaro rallies, anti-Lula rallies, you'll frequently see his flags in the crowd. Beautiful. And it's not, the rally's not about Israel. But what do they say? Think about the statement they're making. Why are all of these people that I just mentioned pro-Israel? All these populist right-wing nationalists who are for the large part Christian. Why are they pro-Israel?
Okay.
Because they understand the civilizational struggle that we are in. They're losing their countries. They're fighting back. They're asserting their nationalism, and they're asserting their Christianity and their values against the onslaught of jihad. And somehow American conservatives, MAGA, who are also populist nationalist, right-wing conservatives or overwhelmingly Christian, have lost the plot. Why do they not get it? Especially the younger generation. What are they missing
Okay.
that
I don't think it's that hard of a question.
on the right all around the world understand what is missing.
I'll tell you
I think
why.
the foreign aid is part of it.
No, yeah, it is, but that's a small thing. Because I'll tell you what, if you're for Israel, look, the money we put in NATO and in so many other places is so huge, and nobody ever, everybody complains about Israel. Yes, the foreign aid, but that's just a little weapon. See, Israel, we're giving them all this money. They control Congress, they control the White House, and they control America, and they control Hollywood. They control everything. So that's just, a little a bow in their quiver. It's really about this. We surrendered our culture to the left, to the woke, to the DEI, going back before anybody ever used the word woke or DEI.
And to jihad.
But before that, when we first started giving up our colleges, our universities, and it's seeping down into high school, grade school now, when we gave that up to secularism and to postmodernism and to all of the other isms that are anti-American, anti-Western, anti-biblical values, then truth more than even values, we surrendered. So we brought up a couple of generations that are completely indoctrinated in this. Now, I'm not saying there aren't other things. Go ahead.
No, but here's the problem. All the populations that I just mentioned, you could say the same thing about them. And yet, the populist, nationalist conservatives in those countries are pro-Israel. And the populist, nationalist conservatives in America, in the younger generation of that, especially I'm talking about, are not. And it's like they're missing a piece of the plot. I think that they don't. I think my take, and I'm not married to this take, but it's my initial thought on this, is that the fact that Western civilization is under threat by Islam, by jihadist Islam, is a tangible reality in Europe. And it's not a tangible enough reality in America. And at the same time, I think that the fact that the Jewish establishment and most Jews in America are hard left progressives who hold a lot of positions of power in the woke constellation of the infrastructure of, and in the leadership of, I think also hurts Jews. It hurts the Jewish brand in America, in the eyes of MAGA. I think so. You have like the ADL and, being an obnoxious left-wing progressive organization in the name of Judaism, So like there's I think it's a witch's brew of a number of different factors. Foreign aid is a piece of it.
It is a number of factors.
I think underlying it is that they don't take the threat of jihadist Islam as seriously as, like, if you're living in a country like the Netherlands, that Western civilization is being strangled out of existence by Islam. Look at England. About all these areas that are governed by Sharia law and the percentage of
hundreds of Sharia courts
and elected officials who are so many elected officials who are Arabs.
Dozens of mayors are Muslim and jihadist Muslims.
So you're following this story. You know what's going on there, and so.
It's not going to.
These European conservatives, they look at Israel, on the battlefield fighting these jihadists, and says, "Yeah, of course, I'm on Israel's side. That's the war. That's the kinetic front of the civilizational war that we're in." And somehow in America, I think that the conservatives don't quite understand the civilizational threat being posed by Islam and how that's what Israel's fighting.
I think part of it is that America is so large. We're not Belgium. right? We're big, and we've got oceans on either side of us. We've got Mexico and Canada.
Yes.
They're really annoying. I don't want anybody coming in from Canada that's Canadian because I know who they brought in.
You don't have enemies. You don't have enemies on your borders.
I don't have enemies. I made a map, a graphic of America, and I put the bombs and missiles and, all of the other weaponry of all of the Islamic jihadist, Hamas, Hezbollah, all of these surrounded it. And I just said, what would you do? Or how would you feel if this was us? If our entire southern border was, instead of having to deal with these people coming over, if it was instead covered by missiles being shot into the United States. So we don't have that. And sometimes adversity brings wisdom. Of course, we know that. And so we have not had the same level of adversity. It's coming. Hezbollah has said, not Hezbollah, Iran has said, we have Hezbollah cells there. They made that declaration. We have cells in America. Just wait and see what's going to happen. And so we're going to have to learn the same lesson that we should have learned on 9/11, that we should have learned from your October 7th. We're going to have to learn it again. What we want to do is prevent our continuing down a road that will bring permanent disaster to America. And that is possible. No matter how big we are, we can fall. And I think I'd love to talk to you more about why America is our youth are more susceptible to this. But I'd have to also see the numbers. Have you looked at the youth in Europe?
Yeah.
I just saw a video of all these red-haired and light-colored English guys, or I don't know if they were from Scotland or England. I think they were from London, and they were all saying, Inshallah, Alhamdulillah, and my name is Abdullah. They all, for some reason, and they all had their little beards, and they were just going down, all these white kids, so. But is the rest of continental Europe, are the youths still as clueless as we find here? Do you know?
I don't know.
I think that's what we have to answer and ask and answer.
Not so in touch. I could ask some people.
Yeah, I would like to know what the youth in Germany, I bet you they're as bad as American youth. I don't know. I would like to find out if they were wiser. Well, anyway, we've got Trump in office. We've got Witkoff. I'm very, very concerned about Qatar. And it seems like there's a lot of this stuff going on with Qatar that we should be cutting off Qatar. We should be pulling out of our bases there. Witkoff
is a Qatari asset.
Yeah. Do you consider him that? Or just, so you really think because of all the money he's received from Qatar?
Do you know when he received it? It was 2023. It was extremely recent.
Oh, I didn't know it was that recent. I thought it was several years ago.
It might have even been 2024. It was extremely recent. I have to check right now. I actually made a video about this a little while ago. Let me take a look.
Well,
it's extremely recent. Now, what I'm saying is that for me, it was Trump was already running for president in this last campaign when Witkoff was when the Qataris swooped in and paid him $600 million for this building that he was left holding the bag because of a bad deal
in New York
with a business partner who took off on it, and he was left holding the bag with a whole lot of debt. And the Qataris swooped in and purchased a close friend of Donald Trump's, who was Jewish.
Yeah, of course.
That's what this is. They knew what they were doing. They were buying access to Trump
in advance.
And that's exactly what they got.
Well, where do we go from here? Because Qatar is an enemy, Turkey is an enemy, obviously Iran is an enemy. That's
why you've just underscored why taking down the Iranian regime is so important. Look, the Iranian regime is weaker now than it's ever been.
Right.
Not in terms of money, they were more broke at the end of Trump's first term than they are right now because of all the Chinese Communist Party purchasing their oil that we talked about. But in terms of the regime being on the verge of collapse, the internal unrest is building, and so there's the nuclear issue, but there's also the regime itself. If the Iranian regime has to be taken down, and if it's taken down, then we don't have to worry as much about the fact that Turkey's an enemy. Because
as I see it, let me throw something out at you. Israel, I consider to be a bulwark or a hedge of protection or an outpost of the West. That every European head of state that doesn't consider Israel a strategic asset and a partner is just like they're fools, and they're subversives for their own culture. Israel is there on the front lines, and so that must remain. Imagine if we had Persia, Iran, this massive state that is high in the hills compared to what comes after it, and then you've got Afghanistan and Pakistan over here. Like you said, this is another stopgap. It's like going through a neighborhood that has multiple speed bumps, right? Yeah,
but it's also huge.
And it's huge. Also huge. It's absolutely huge. And also
the region only.
Yeah, it's a huge breakup. So we've got somebody on the Mediterranean at the heart of the world, as I consider it. Then we have over here this massive Iranian nation, that ancient nation of Persia, and that's just another speed bump in the world that slows down China and any other enemies that are on that side of the speed bump. And the people are so ready. You mentioned the fact that fewer Muslims attend weekly worship, I'm assuming weekly worship, in Iran than any other Muslim states. I'll throw another one out at you. There's no one can be sure of the exact percentage, but there is estimates as low as 40% of Iranians are still Muslims. Still Muslims.
I wouldn't doubt it.
And so there are, I don't know about Jews, but obviously there are underground Christians. There are many, many atheists, because many people who leave Islam first go through their atheism.
A lot of them are just, so again, the underground church is exploding.